This is an interview with Richard Alagna. Wednesday, September 18th, 2002, approximately 9:10 a.m. at the Holiday Inn, Westbury, Long Island, New York. The interviewer is Michael Russert. Could you give me your full name, your date of birth, and place of birth, please?
Richard Gregory Alagna was born November the 16th, 1925. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, at the Brooklyn Hospital.
Could you tell me your pre-war education?
I graduated from high school, and I had started Brooklyn College. I knew that I was going into the service, so do you want me to just keep talking?
I'm going to ask you another question.
All right, go right ahead.
Where were you, and what was your reaction to the events at Pearl Harbor when you heard about this?
Well, I recall it was a Sunday morning, and I was a kid. I mean, I was born in 1925, so I was pretty young. And quite frankly, I didn't know where Pearl Harbor was.
Most veterans do.
And but I think that everybody knew that we were going to go into a war. I mean, it was as simple as that. I think the government and Mr. Roosevelt prepared us for that.
Were you drafted, or did you enlist?
No, I enlisted.
And why did you select the Air Force, Air Corps?
Now that's an interesting question. I always wanted to fly. That was my goal in life. I mean, I wanted to be a bird. I wanted to just fly in an airplane. I read all the World War I exploits of all of my friends that were aces. And that's what I wanted to do. And when I was in high school, I was 17 and a half, I guess, when I graduated. And I wanted to fly in naval aviation. The Navy flyers / Marine flyers were the best training. And they had to be very good, because you had to be able to land a plane on nothing, on a boat that goes. But I found out that I had 20/20 in one eye and 20/30 in the other eye, and neither the Army, Navy, nor Marine flying units would take me. And I was a little depressed about that. They came around with an exam called the A-12 exam. Do you know what that is?
No, why don't you explain that?
Well, if you pass this examination, you were qualified to be an officer. You had the mental ability to be an officer, which is minimal as far as I'm concerned. But you would go to college. And this is where I have the big bone of contention with the government, which doesn't always tell you the truth, and everybody knows that. But I didn't know that at 17 and a half years old, because I played it straight. They said that they would send me to college, and I had a choice. I remember distinctly of having a choice of political affairs, government, what's going to happen when you take over a country? What are you going to do with them? I had a great liking, not only just for flying, but also for history and for political science. And later, I became a lawyer. Well, anyway, so I took the test, and I passed. And I managed to convince my mother that this was a thing to do, and she signed for me. And graduated high school. Took the Brooklyn College exam, and I was admitted to day session, which was a bit of an honor. And I got up to college. I was in there for, I don't know, a month or so. Not for a full semester, and the papers finally came through. And I was to be sent to Alfred University. I did not know where Alfred University is, but I know that they had bells up there. They ring. You know those bells. Okay, great. Well, they would wake you up and put you to sleep with bells. When I got up there with all these other young 17-year-old kids, they handed me some books, and they handed me a very strange instrument, a slide rule. I don't understand mathematics, or whatever it's called. I mean, 2 plus 2 is, eludes me. I mean, it's nothing I want to play with. But they told me I was to be an engineer. And I said, but this is not what you told me. And they said, you're going to be an engineer. Okay, this was a reserve program. I was not sworn into the Army, but I had took the oath of allegiance. And we plodded along, and I did not want to be an engineer. Hated it. Didn't understand it. Some of the courses that they gave, you had to have prerequisites, and I didn't. And I played catch up the way you just couldn't believe. I mean, it was very trying, even though I have a little gray matter. And we grumbled and mumbled, and then we got good news. The Army Air Corps lowered their eye requirements, 20/20 and 20/30. So that if one eye was 20/30, they would take you into their flying program. Well, I was seventh heaven. And there were approximately 20 other kids that were in seventh heaven. Now, you would think that the commander of this unit, who was, I don't know, major, whatever he was, would be delighted to think that 20 young kids are willing to go out and fly, and maybe he was furious. We got this information from a second lieutenant who had crashed, and they put him on limited service. Remember that limited service deal where you weren't that disabled, but you could still wear a uniform and do certain things? So he had told us that about this deal, and he said we're all pretty smart boys, and if we wanted to, when we got down to Fort Dix, we take the Air Cadet test. They called it Air Cadet / Air Trainee test. So 20 of us went to the major, whatever he was, and said we wanted out. He was furious. He had one boy who said he wasn't going to go to classes anymore. He had him marching up and down, up and down, up and down. We all took an oath that we'd fail, which was very easy for me because I hated what I was doing. I mean, I didn't have to study anymore, right? Okay, so we went to Fort Dix, and we went in mass. Everybody that was in that unit went down there, and that was also the kids that had passed their courses, and they were razzing us. They said, we were foolish, this and that, stay in the program, blah, 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 nonsense. Well, did they make a mistake? Because the program dropped dead right then and there. They did not go back to Alfred University. They went into the infantry. And they're the boys that didn't know what to do, couldn't take orders, because we're all very rebellious. I mean, we're bright boys, and it's kind of hard to push us around. Well, the 20 of us passed the exam. Not one of us failed. And they gave us a little card. The little card said, "You are welcome to the Air Corps, blah, 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 blah. You know, you're going to have this and all that nonsense." So we went to our little barracks in Fort Dix. And I have to digress for a second. This is kind of important. I was bitten by a dog when I was very young, and I had the rabies injections. And I don't know if any of you know what they were like. It was a big hypodermic needle. It was not a shot in the arm, but it was a needle, and it would go into the wall of your stomach, and men would hold your arms, and and it was very painful. And I don't like pain. Keep that in mind as a footnote. So we're in Fort Dix, and we get our injections, and I don't like injections because I keep thinking about needles, and I get very upset. So anyway, we fall out into the street, and some of the guys that were past the test were sent to Greenboro or someplace, and some guys were sent some other place, and I'm waiting for my name to be called off, and it hadn't been, and another guy's name hadn't been called off. About 5 or 6 of us still milling around. And if you were there for, I think, a quarantine period, you could get a pass. Now, I got a pass. And where did I go? I went home, of course, naturally. Got home, and my mother said to me, "You don't look good." And I said, "I don't feel very good." And I was perspiring. And she called the family doctor, and he came, and he said, "He has the measles." My mother had been in training as a nurse, which is another story, fascinating story. But he said, I can't treat him. He's in the Army." So he made a phone call, and they sent an ambulance from Staten Island. And I went down. I was in an apartment house, and I went down in the ambulance. I don't think they let me sit up. They made me lie down, and I got the chills and all kinds of nonsense. And they took me to Staten Island. And they put me in a dark room, and they told me I had the German measles. Okay? And I think the quarantine period was, 14 days or something like that. So there I am, in a hospital. They promised that they would send a message to Fort Dix. They said I was cured. I said, "Can I go back home?" And they said, "No, absolutely not, Private. You must go back to Fort Dix immediately." So I went back to Fort Dix. When you get back on an Army post, the first thing you do, you show them your papers, which I did, and then you sign a book that you got in and the date on the book. Now, this is very important. I signed the book, stated, I went to where I was sleeping. Naturally, all my stuff was gone, so I had to get more stuff, I guess blankets or whatever. And all of the fellas that I knew that were still ready to go had left. They'd gone. They were on their way flying planes. They were, I don't know, whatever, killing Germans, I don't know. And the week would go on. They never called my name. Every day I'd go out, stand in the street. Oh, by the way, I was now barracks chief. Oh, when I was in Alfred University, it was a cadet program. We had military procedure, how to write communiques, how to read the book. We knew the Army regs. We were officer material. We were going to be officers of some sort. And I knew how to march. I knew how to do all the fancy nonsense. And when the new guys would come in, I would teach them how to make beds and all kinds of things and where to go and all that. Comes the weekend, I'd go home, got a pass, come back. Comes the weekend, I'd go home, get a pass, come back. I'm on Fort Dix. I'm there. Nobody's bothering me. I'm a king, absolute king, except if you miss the series of injections, you have to go through them again. Well, there was no way that I'm going to have anybody stick a needle in me. So I decided that this is ridiculous. And I would always ask, how about me? When am I going out? And they said, relax, relax, relax. So I wandered down to the medical unit and I said, I think it's time for me to get the second series of shots. And they say, who are you? And I said, I'm Richard Gregory Alagna, 12-22-82-19. I remember this, by the way, the serial number is exceptionally important because if you don't know it, you can't get off the base. I have forgotten everything else. I sometimes have to look up my zip code. I have to look up sometimes even my telephone number, but I will never forget 12-22-82-19 because you can't get a drink. You can't go play with the girls. Well, all hell broke loose. This officer came over and he started to scream at me. He said, I was AWOL. I said, I was not AWOL. I said, I was in a hospital. I said, they sent you a telegram. They told me you sent your car. It was in an Army hospital, not, a private hospital. And I signed the book. And he was real nasty. He was nasty. He said to me, you're going out on the first shipment. And I said, where? And he said, what did you say? I said, where? Now you have to understand that I had 3 months, or approximately 3 months, of being a cadet. Realized that nobody tells you the truth. They knock you around, and you got to grow up awful fast. And he said, you're going into the infantry. And I said, but you say I don't have any service records. I passed the exam. He said that you don't have any service records. We have no record of your passing this exam. We have no record of you. When your service records catch up with you, they'll transfer you to the Air Corps. And I said to him, may I talk to you man to man? Now I was all of 18 years old. And he looked at me and he put his head up. He said, what? And I said, man to man. He said, all right. I said, you know in your heart that once the infantry gets me, they're not going to let me go. They're not going to transfer me after they teach me what to do in the infantry. I have this booklet, and I had this little booklet that said I was an air cadet. And he said, well, anybody could get one of those. I said, it's typewritten. I said, I don't know, and I really don't know how to type. So he said, well, I said, give me the test. I can take the test blindfolded. I said, it's the simplest test to me. If you pass an examination and it's easy, it's got to be simple. Maybe not because, if it's too complicated, you're up with it. But anyway, it was simple. And he looked at me and he said, you really did pass that exam, didn't you? I said, yes, sir, I did. And that's all I want to do is I got a shot at it. You got to let me do it. I will send you out in the first group to the Air Corps. And I hope to God you're not lying to me. And I swear I'm not lying. Okay, and here comes the fun and games. They send me out to the Air Corps without my permanent service records or whatever you want to call them, you know, stuff like that. My hospitalization stuff was lost. And I don't know if I went through the second series of needles. I didn't care at that point. But I was with men that were 38 up to, I think, 42 years old. They were going to be the laborers in the Air Corps. They were going to, I don't know, build the barracks, grade the roads, do whatever they could do, the menial things in the Air Corps. And every time I fell out, an officer would come by and say, because after all I was 18 at the time, "What are you doing with these people?" And I said, "You don't want to know unless you have my service records and stuff like that." Because I talked to everybody. Anytime a captain, a major, anybody, I plead with them, find my records. Please find my... I'm supposed to be on the other side of the field taking air cadet training. I wrote letters for them. I listened to them cry at night. They had never been away from home. One man was funny. He and his son both went down to the draft board. His son was rejected, and he went. Well, I don't remember this incident exactly where it came, but I will tell you this, it was a funny one. Because I like to tell the funny things that happened. I never drank coffee. I didn't like coffee. I mean, I've got used to it now and all that, but I didn't drink coffee till later on when I was in the Air Corps. But we went to the movies. You've been to the movies in the Army. And you get back when it's late. And your lights are out. But all the lights in the barrack was on. All of them. All of the barracks were on. And the men were all outside holding their stomachs. And some guys grabbed us and wanted to hit us. They were very angry. And they said, "How do you feel?" I said, "Well, I feel fine. What's the matter?" I said, "Did you drink coffee? Do you drink coffee?" And I said, "No, I drink milk. You know, milk, water, soda, whatever." It seemed that a disgruntled GI put soap suds in the coffee and washed out the entire unit. I mean, it wasn't funny. But let's put it this way, if you want to get a busted nose, I don't know which would have been better, to get a busted nose or to be online trying to get into the John. Funny things. Well, I think the funniest one was when the major called me in. Calls me in and he said, "I've got some good news for you and some bad news for you, Private." And I said, "Let's hear the good news, sir." "We've got your service records." I said, "Wonderful. And you are an air trainee or an air cadet," whatever the hell they called us. I said, "That's wonderful. Wonderful. Seventh heaven. I'd already gone through basic training." The bad news is, I think it was either 43 or 47,000 cadets were washed out summarily. Zap, gone, finished. They weren't killing enough of us. So they cut the program down. So I said, well, what does it mean? He said, well, I got a problem. I said, what's your problem? We don't know what to do with you. I said, what do you mean you don't know what to do with me? Well, these air trainees were being sent back to their old units. They had transferred from the infantry or the ski troops or God knows what. But you've never been in a unit other than the Air Corps. How would you like, catch 22, how would you like to get back as a flyer? Yeah. Well, if you volunteer to be an aerial gunner, when you finish your missions and you come back, you can get to be a flyer. I will personally see, I'm listening to this guy and I'm saying, who the hell is he kidding? But what are they going to do with me? See, so I said, well, what are you talking about? So, and by the way, there were some fellows that actually, I knew a navigator that came back, finished his missions, and then he went back into training and became a pilot. So it was, wasn't such a bad deal. So I said, yeah, wonderful, wonderful. So I'm now going to fly. So they send me, I don't remember, I guess on my records it says where they sent me. They sent me to a place to become an aerial gunner. And now you have to understand that I really did want to fly. I really did. I really wanted to find out what it was like. I wanted a taste of this. And because of my height, they said I'd become a ball turret gunner. Now, I don't know if you know what that is. Oh, you know what that is. Yeah, They told me later on that the tail gunners wouldn't go down in the ball. But anyway, I had to gain a little proficiency, mechanical ability. If you recall, I said I can't add 2 and 2 and all that. I don't like to. They made me learn the machine gun. That was a basic thing, the machine gun. There was a group, 2 engineers, the flight engineers, 2 radio operators, an armored gunner, and myself. And I was the only career gunner. I think it's called a 611 or something like that. And you have to learn how to field stripped, I think that's the expression, the machine gun. You had to be able to take the machine gun apart and put it together. And we were supposed to be able to do it blindfold. I was always very rebellious and always liked to make a joke. But I would put the machine gun together and there'd be a couple of parts left over. And the sergeant didn't like that. And I said, well, it looks okay to me because it's slipped in the case, And he said, no. I said, you have to do it blindfold. I said, why do I have to do it blindfold? He says, well, he said, if you're flying a night mission and you burn out a barrel, which you could easily do, we had extra barrels on the plane. We could put them in. He said, you got to be able to do that. And I said, well, if it's nighttime and he can't see me and I can't see him, why do I have to do this? It was my concept was, If we just keep the lights off in the plane, he'll go away, because a gunner on a bomber is not supposed to be looking for trouble. He's supposed to make the trouble go away. We were supposed to make them go away. If we saw them, we said go away. I mean, it was as simple as that. So I went at night on my own time. They gave me a nickname, Malfunction, because I couldn't get the thing together. Now I'll tell you about people. It has to do with machine guns. I don't know if I'm talking too long or what. Okay. When you fire a machine gun, it's not like a pistol or a rifle. It jumps all over the place, and a lot of guys would be quite frightened of it. And what I had, with everybody, had to fire this weapon, and they had them mounted on a tripod, fixed mounted, and they had a track that would go around, and it was a Jeep. You couldn't hit the Jeep, but the Jeep had a target on it, and they put a governor or something on there to make the Jeep go around without anybody in it, and it'd go around and around, and when it would come by, you'd shoot the machine gun. And the first time I went out, I'm standing there, and by the way, it was a .30 caliber, and it came by, and I'm like bang, bang, and a cartridge exploded in the barrel, in the breech, and I had no glasses on, and I was hit in the face with the cordite. Do you know the little black cordite? And it caused little blood spots, and some of it was indented in my face. And when it kicked back like that, I went right down to the ground. It was anything, And the sergeant came over. And if I ever met him today, I'd kill that son of a bitch. No, I mean that. I mean it. Because he said to me, "What are you, a coward? Get up, clear it, do it again." Now I knew later what was wrong with the weapon, but I didn't know at that time. So naturally, everybody's looking at you, peer pressure, all that, hell, and I want to do this thing. So I did it, started again, and it did it again. And this time, when I'm on the ground, I saw a pair of sandaled shoes and pinks. And the only one that wears pinks are officers. And this officer said to me, "Are you all right?" Because there were little specks of blood. I said, "Oh, no, sir, I'm fine. Happens all the time." And he said, "What happens all the time?" I said, "The thing opens up, it explodes, a bullet, bomb comes over your face, He said, "This happened more than once." Well, he dressed that sergeant down. The sergeant came over to whisper in my ear, "I'll kill you if you ever come back here. I'll kill you." I could have lost an eye. I could have lost both eyes. I didn't realize till later on that the gun wasn't put together. It wasn't proper. Now, what possesses somebody to be that callous? I mean, I couldn't put my finger on it. I didn't know why this guy would do this at the risk of having some kid lose an eye, And he had a cushy job. He's not being shot at. someplace in the States, I don't know, Florida or Texas, or I don't know how we were. But why did he do that? I didn't know. I couldn't figure that out. I couldn't figure out a lot of things. Cute story. Somewhere along the line, I don't remember. No, I was in gunnery at the time. But we're sitting around not doing anything. We're not going anyplace. And they said that there wasn't any. They needed some volunteers. That's a bad word, by the way, as everybody knows. But the deal was that if you pulled guard duty for, I think, a week, you get a pass to go to New Orleans. Well, you know, I mean, you got to believe. I mean, this. Everybody said New Orleans is fun. This is great. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do it. So I did it, and they gave me a carbine. I checked it out. I was very good with weapons now, and I got live ammo, and I'm marching back and forth in the heat. And there were some tents there, not too far away, about 100 feet, I guess. And there were some guys that had been flying. They were flying in Catalinas, the Cats. They were doing, I think, submarine patrol down New Orleans or wherever the hell they were. And I'm going back and forth, and I'm sweating like a pig. And I can't see this nonsense because to me all you had to do was stand at one place and you could turn your head and look back and forth. But why go back and forth? But that's what they wanted you to do. The Army had some wacky rules. So I back and forth, and there was a kitten. And the kitten was spitting at something. And I got closer to it. And it was one of the biggest rattlesnakes I have ever seen. It was a doozy. And the kitten is going to get bitten. He's going to die. I'm calling the kitten won't come over. And I figured, well, I never missed anything in my life when I shot at it. So I pulled back the slide on the carbine, took an aim at the snake. A guy in the tent sees me and he's calling me a son of a bitch because he thinks I'm shooting the cat, the kitten. And I pull the trigger. Nothing happens. I eject the bullet and I do it again and nothing happens. They're lying to me again. They are lying to me. I then yell for the sergeant of the guard. This snake is a goddamn big snake. I'm figuring this snake is in that tent area. They're going to have one hell of a hard time. Sergeant comes running over in a Jeep, I remember, and I'm trying to figure how I can, hit the snake or whatever. The cat off to the side. I'm beside myself. And I'm yelling, it's a rattlesnake, rattlesnake. He pulls out his .45. This guy couldn't hit a goddamn bond if he was sitting next to it. He points it at the snake and he misses the snake. He shoots 3 times. I said, Sergeant, I yell, let me have the gun. I can hit the snake. I could hit anything. I hit the target all the time. He got pissed. Managed to kill the snake. I'm now complaining about why my gun wouldn't go off, my carbine wouldn't go off. I found out they had filed the firing pin so it wouldn't hit. What the hell was I doing with a gun that couldn't work? He got mad at me. I don't know what I said to him. I don't think I said anything bad, because I did have cadet training. I knew that, you really shouldn't, be upset. Anyway, he made me, put me in the not in the jailhouse, but he made me stay in the barracks.
Okay, we're going to have to hold right here and change tapes.
Oh, okay. Well, we're getting back to the sergeant and the MPs. Well, anyway, he says he's going to have me up on charges. And I don't know what the heck kind of charges. I don't, as much as I knew about Army regs and all of that, I didn't do anything wrong. I tried to kill the snake. I wasn't killing a thing. He couldn't shoot worth a damn. Maybe I said something, but anyway, I'm in trouble. And I don't know what it is. And I go into the bathroom, the latrine, they call it, latrine. And who's sitting there? By the way, all the latrines, as you might have remembered, have no stalls back then. They were all, and he was there, sitting on the throne. He glared at me. I didn't say anything to him. He got up, he left, and I relieved myself, and I looked over to where he had been sitting, and he had taken off his belt. It was a heavy canvas belt that clipped, and it had his .45 on it. And I was delighted, because you can't lose your weapon. You cannot lose your weapon. And I picked up the .45, and I said to myself, Richard, heave it into that jungle, because that was a jungle there. I mean, there was snakes, everything. Heave it into the jungle, nobody will see you, and then let him sweat to figure out where his .45 is. And then another little voice went off in my head and said, just because he's a son of a bitch, you don't have to be one. So I went over to where his office was, and I knocked on the door. And he snarled at me, what do you want? And I said, I want to give you this. He went like this. He reached, where, and he realized his cannon was missing, his .45. I said, you left it in the latrine. He looked at me, and he realized, at least I thought he realized, that I wasn't such a bad guy. And he said, gee, that was nice, whatever. He said, well, forget about the charges. You're free to go back to your unit. And I said, wait a minute. I said, how about my pass to New Orleans? And he said, you kids from New York, well, he was a Southerner, you have a pair of balls I can't believe. So he gave me a pass to go to New Orleans. He laughed, I laughed. I mean, he would have been in a lot of trouble not to have had his weapon. And I went to New Orleans. I had a very good time. I went with another guy that was a gunner, and it was fun. We had a fun time. Anyway, so let me think. Oh, after learning how to operate or how to fix machine gun and all of that, I had to learn how to work the ball turret. Now, if you don't know what a ball turret is, it was an instrument of death, torture, most ridiculous thing that they thought of. But you would get in it. It was self-contained. It was a ball. It was held on by a big ring. And on the B-17, it was permanently out of the plane. A portion of it was out of the plane. And on the B-24, there was a shaft, and hydraulically, you would drop it, and then you'd get in it. And it was exceptionally tight. You could not wear a parachute in it. You could wear your harness, but you couldn't wear a parachute. And when I had to get in it, I always had to turn my face sideways, put my face down on the gun sight, and then signal the guy above to slam the door, and invariably I get hit on the head with the door. It was not very comfortable. Let me digress. Let me get back to gunnery school. I am in gunnery school there, but if you recall, I desperately wanted to fly. I had been with men that were 38, 40 years old, whatever it is, and their training was nothing. And I got fatter and fatter and lazier because I wasn't really doing anything. And I was so badly out of shape that I was a good 20 pounds overweight. I was about 185, I think, at the time. We get to gunnery school, and I'm taking the machine guns apart and all of that. But the physical part, I had to play catch up. And I was never much of an athlete when I was young. And I would run with everybody, and I'd do everything they did, except I couldn't get over the wall. You know, the wall, you had to get over a wall. I'd hit the wall, and my nails would scrape on the wall. There's an officer there thought I was horsing around. And I said, I'm trying. I am trying. And I hit that wall, and I kept, he caught me once going around it, you see. I mean, that's why he caught me, you see, because I would always go. When I was in high school, the coach always yelled at me because they used to make it go around the track. I used to go around and then cut across and go in the back and read a book, because I was one kid that liked to read. And I didn't want to play any of their games. This was a stupid game. And anyway, so he made me. He didn't make me. He thought I was horsing around. On my own, I went out at night after we did everything we were supposed to damn well do, and I ran, losing weight. I even put crap in a knapsack to try to lose weight. I think I got over the wall. He stood there. He said he was going to wash me out, because it got to a point where he realized that nobody in their right mind would hit the wall the way I hit that wall. I mean, I hit the wall. I would have gone through the goddamn wall if I could have. But I'd always get just my fingers up there, and I'm short. You know, I'm not big, tall. Some of these guys were 6 foot. They could just bounce up and grab it and pull them. I couldn't get my hand up there. Forget about going up the rope. I couldn't go up the rope. I could not go up the rope. And but I did build my chest up. My arms were pretty strong. Anyway, he passed me on that. And now it's important that you know that since I understand how things work, I just don't seem to have the ability to hold on to a screw without dropping it 6 times. I don't seem to be able to pick up the right. I don't know the nomenclature of some of the tools that most men know. I mean, certain screwdrivers and certain bits and things. I have no interest in that. And there's a story that has to do with that. Let's see, I think that practically shows you the basic of No. I wanted to fly, And now we had to get into a plane, into a B-17, and do our stuff, what we were taught on the ground. And underneath the seat of the turret was oxygen, an oxygen tube. You were in helicopters, but I don't know if you had no oxygen. All right. And yet we wore an oxygen mask with a certain length of tubing to connect to the thing in the thing. Now, we went up in a B-17, and they outfitted it with long benches. And my last name being Alagna, begins with an A, I was always first, which was lots of fun. Because I could, it'd be nice to know what you're supposed to do by watching the other fellow. That's basically how I learned things, by watching. So I'm supposed to go down into the turret. Now, I've been in a turret before on the ground, but I'm supposed to go down in the turret, and I'm supposed to hook up to the oxygen, and I'm supposed to stay down there, and then they'll tell me to come on up. Okay. So I go down in the and we're flying above the level in which you could breathe. You would get anoxia, and you'd pass out, and you get brain damage, and you die. You get silly too. So anyway, I go down in the turret, put my head down, slammed it shut, not breathing oxygen, just breathing the air that's there, pretty thin, and I'm reaching for the tube. And I get it in my hand, and I can't make contact. And I'm breathing kind of heavily. I'm getting nervous. And I don't know how many minutes went by, and I know that you can't stay down there because you pass out. And frankly, I don't know how they get you out from above. And I said, and the sergeant saying to me, aren't you going, he's on the radio, get it going. And I said, I can't breathe. I can't connect. And he called me a coward. I was mortified. I was really very, very, very upset. And the conversation went back and forth. I could hear the pilot saying, he said, well, get him the hell out of the turret. So I got out, and I hooked up to oxygen. In the plane, everybody's on, and guys that look at me kind of funny, And pilot orders the gunner that's training us, the sergeant that's training us, to go down and see if what I said was true. And he said it was true. Nobody else went down in the turret. We landed. And Sergeant was very good kid. He made all the men stand there, and he apologized to me. It seems that the word is schmuck, idiot, jerk, cut the tube too short. It had frayed. So he, never thinking that the gas, the oxygen mask won't connect. I mean, some of these guys just didn't think these things through. And that was the reason, and the sergeant apologized, and I felt, pretty good. Anoxia. Stay in the middle and never volunteer, right? Okay. We go into the pressure tank. I don't know if you went in the pressure tank. Did you? No, you didn't have to do that. Went in the pressure tank, and they simulate the altitude you're going to go up to and what the pressure is, and et cetera, and how it is. And the sergeant says, we need 3 volunteers. I said, boy, that's great. You know, I'm in the middle, right? He says, you, and you. And I was right in the middle. And one guy had to write, the pad and pencil, and the other guy had to do something, I forgot what. And I had to do exercise. And this will show how you can, you'll pass out. And I'm doing you get giddy, you begin to laugh, because it's a great high. And the lights got dim in the place. It really did. I swear they did. It looked like it was a rheostat, and I'm getting giddy, and they slap an oxygen mask on me, and they give me pure oxygen. And the guy said, "Come on, you horsing around." What's the horsing around? I said, "That's what happened." The other guy was writing, and his handwriting was supposed to be like this. It was going like this, up and down, up and this, and he finally passed out, or they gave him oxygen. So I covered that. All right. I think we'll now go to when I met my crew. Can I keep talking? Yeah?
Sure.
Okay. And then we'll get into the 8th Air Corps, because it's this kind of cute stuff. Met my crew. Now, my crew is very strange. The pilot was an old man. Now, you gotta remember, at that time, I think I was 19 or 20. I just turned 20 when I met the crew, I think. Anyway, so the pilot was an old man. He was, I think, 28 or 29 years old. That was very old. Very, very old. He was also Southern. And he didn't take the wire out of his hat, which meant that his garrison hat, there was a wire, and if you take it out, you crunch it, and you get that 50 mission or 25 mission, or whatever, Air Corps look. And he had transferred from the infantry, and he was Southern. And I don't think he realized that the Civil War was over. The second officer was from Kansas. He went to the University of Kansas. He couldn't fly worth a goddamn. He was probably the worst pilot in the Air Corps. He was obnoxious. The navigator was a nice guy. He wasn't a kid, but he was a nice guy. He was a couple of years older than I am. He was an accountant, and he was a flight officer. He was not an officer. That's the difference between an enlisted man and an officer. Someplace in limbo, they gave you a bar with a little color in it, some nonsense like that. And we had a bombardier who, later on in life, I've changed my mind. I always thought he was stupid. He was afraid. He really was afraid. He got us up to 30,000 feet one time, and said his bomb sight didn't work. Couldn't use it. And we went back down. It takes a long time to go up to 30,000 feet. And turns out he didn't plug it in. All you had to do was just plug it in. We went on a practice mission, supposed to hit a target on an island, surrounded by water, surrounded by a Federal Reserve Park. He had a farm. He was worthless. He didn't go overseas with us. I thought he was stupid. Then later on, I realized I think that he just liked to walk around in an officer's uniform with a pair of wings, and that was it. And that's my final say about him. He always wanted everybody to call him Lieutenant. Okay, the nose gunner was a delight. He had a high school, I don't know if he had a high school education, but he was an engineer. He was a mechanic, mechanical ability and all of that. And he loved to smoke cigars. The radio operator was a millionaire's son. They owned a big fish cannery, and everybody knows who they are. Grotons or Gordons, you know, yeah, who they are. And I have to bring religion into this because this is part of it. Jimmy was Catholic, and he couldn't make up his mind if he wanted to be a priest or marry a girl. He showed us a picture of the girl. I think it reminded me of the Center for Notre Dame. I mean, she was, and but I will tell you. Well, I'll jump ahead a little bit. Jimmy, on our very first mission, and this is one of my anti-Catholic stories. Took his St. Christopher's medal, and he hung it on the in the cockpit, and the navigator had a fit because the pilot couldn't fly the plane correctly because it demagnetized the compass. And I thought that was wonderful because there was good old St. Christopher out there leading us around in circles. And not needless to say, that medal wasn't used on any more missions. All right, so let me see. Now we've taken care of, the engineer. Now, this is a very strange thing. His name was Brockmeyer. Brockmeyer looked very young. I never gave it much thought, but he looked very young. And but he was competent at doing what he was doing. He really knew. He knew the airplane. He could fix anything on the plane. He ran around and did all the magic things. He was a slight kid. And he was a wise guy. Once he picked me up in an automobile, and I said, "Where'd you get the automobile?" He said, "I hot-wired it." I got out of the car instantly. This kid had stolen the car, and he's driving around the place. He just took somebody's car and decided to drive around. Okay, so now we talk about the armor gunner, Neil, nice guy. Neil was from Connecticut, and Cornell, I think he was at Cornell. Well, by the way, most of the kids on the crew were college graduates, or college, not graduate, college men. He was in advanced training. I could have killed him because I hated him for this. He had it. He had it. He was in advanced training in flying. He was the cadet officer, and they gave him his orders to go to heavy bombers, to fly multiple engines. And he wanted to be a fighter pilot, as we all did. Everybody in the Air Corps that were flying wanted to be fighter pilots. Nobody wanted to do anything else. We all wanted to be Eddie Rickenbacker. And he got a guy that wanted to go the bombers. He wanted to make a switch. And the Army heard him say that, and he must have said it in a loud voice, and they washed him out. He said, you don't tell the Army what to do. And he ended up in heavy bombers. But, I mean, when I heard his story, I nearly died because I was just dying to get my hands on the controls of the plane. I did fly the plane, once or twice, but just when we were in the air. Anyway, I liked him. He was a very nice guy. And the tail gunner was a ski trooper. Remember I mentioned ski troopers? Well, they were going to send him back because he had transferred. He was a nice little short guy. And I guess he could ski. I never knew that. And so he became a tail gunner. He was from the University of Chicago. We had Harvard. We had everybody on the crew. The only two non-college kids was the nose gunner and the engineer. We're in training. That's where I am. We're in training, and we're up at I can't think of the name of the airfield. Near above Hartford, Springfield, Westover Field. Westover Field. Okay, Westover. That's where we all met. That's where we all did our dancing. And let me digress for a second. We're flying very old planes. These were not the ones we flew in combat. We had some old planes in combat, but these were bad planes. And there was a kid from the Bronx. It's been often asked me, was flying voluntary? And nobody would believe me when I said it was. You did not have to fly. At any time, you could have gone in and said, I'm out. That wouldn't mean you'd be out of the Army. You just didn't fly. Where they would send you, God only knows. They'd send you someplace. The Army wasn't going to let you go, but you did not have to fly. When I was up there at Westover Field, this one kid from the Bronx, a nice kid, said to me, for some reason I was looked upon a guy that, since I had the training before and since I could handle some of the officers by giving them what they wanted, he said, I can't take it. He couldn't, he said every time he got in the plane he thought I was going to blow up. And he couldn't go near a plane again. And so I told him, I said, it's not a disgrace if that's what you do, because we're in a team, and if the unit can't function together, you're not helping the guy next to you, and you're going to let him down when it's important. So I told him to go to see the commanding officer, which he did, and tell him exactly what he told me. And I met him. I met him at Fort Dix when I was being discharged. He ended up as a sergeant in the infantry. He saw hand-to-hand combat in the Philippines. Now, the point I always made is that everybody had a point where, they'd snap. They just sat there. They couldn't function. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you about. If I may, can I keep chatting?
Mm-hmm, sure.
Keep chatting and tell you about this great co-pilot we had. Because the things I'm telling you are not nice about some of these people.
Mhm.
But you know, in life you begin to realize that some people just aren't nice. I'm down in the turret. We're in the States, down in the turret, and this turret, you lower it down, it comes out the belly of the plane, you have to jump down in it, open it up, etc., get in, and it's hydraulic and electric.
Mhm.
That's what makes the thing work. I'm listening on the interphones, and I don't hear anything. I can only hear the engines going around. It's deafening, by the way, flying in a 4-engine bomber. It was absolutely deafening. And there's some portals. And I have my hands on the handles to make my turret turn. And it wouldn't go. Just was dead in the water. And I look up in the portals and I see, and I could see some of the guys running around, and I thought I saw one of the kids put on a chute. Normally we wore chest chutes, so the chutes were kept separate, and because it was an additional weight that you had to stand up with. So I realized, and I turned on the radio. I tried to speak, and I couldn't hear my own voice. If you can't hear your own voice, it's not coming through your headset. Mm-hmm. Ergo, something's wrong. So I realized that now I had to go back to my training. And there's a way to get out of the turret. Oh, you cannot leave the turret when it's in the air. I mean, you can't drop out. You're in this damn thing. But there were some cranks, and you could manually crank the turret around, and it would come up to where you could get out. And then your memory has to be perfect, because you had to lock it. And if you didn't lock it, when you got up to get out, it would spin and you would lose your legs. Well, thank God the sergeant that trained me told me that, because I did exactly what he told me to do, and that's what comes with training. Training is a very important thing. You must do what you're supposed to do, what you're trained to do, and improvise when you have to. So I locked it, I got out, pulled myself, because I'm down in a well, pulled myself out of the well. Everybody's got their parachutes on. I put my parachute on. I go over to one of the guys, and I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "We have lost power, electrical power, and the plane will still go like an automobile, mm-hmm. because the gasoline is flowing into the engines and it's going, and the pilot's going crazy, and the engineer is running around trying to figure out what the hell is wrong with the damn thing." He had rung the get ready to bail out bell. And that's what I saw through the portal. Get ready to bail out. But I didn't hear it. Mm-hmm. There's no bell in the turret. I immediately thought there should have been a bell in the turret. Or that somebody should have, hopefully, had taken a wrench or God knows what, whacked on the shaft so that 3 times or whatever, so I would know to get out. story is about the co-pilot. The co-pilot is supposed to be in charge of the gunners. That was his job. He was supposed to coordinate things that we were supposed to do. Okay, fine. They get the problem fixed. The music goes back on. The radio's on. You know, everybody's happy. I'm finished for the day. Up comes the turret. I'm not going down there again. Not that day. Okay, but I have a problem. Now, I can't tell other guys what to do. I don't have the rank, and I didn't want to let them know that, you know, I was slightly pissed at them, because I was, but, you know, they had to think for themselves, because if they say get ready to bail out, they're going to go. They're not going to come and hold my hand. So we land, and the first thing I do is I walk up front. We're on the ground. I walk up front, and I said to the co-pilot, I got a problem. He says, what's your problem? And I said, well, because he was obviously concerned, you know. And I said, you rang to get ready to bail. They rang the bell to get ready to bail out. But there's no sound in my turret. I would like you to instruct the gunners back there, if they can, to give me some kind of a signal so I can get out. Now, this is not going to be nice language, but this is what the son of a bitch said. When I bail out, I'll wave to you as I go by. Now, as God is my witness, that is what that son of a bitch said to me. Now, he was a big football player, and I'm 5'7.5" or whatever the hell I am. And I'm from Brooklyn. And you don't say things like that. And I grabbed him. You're not supposed to touch an officer. It's again the rules. And I turned him around, and I said to him right in his face, as I said, as God is my witness, if I get my guns around fast enough, I'll blow you out of the sky. And if I get down on the ground, I'll hunt you down and I'll kill you. And I let go of him. Well, now I got a problem. You don't touch an officer and you don't threaten them. But he was scum. But I was in trouble. Hasn't been the first time. Will never be the last. Go back to the barracks, sitting there, and one of the guys from another crew says, what's your problem? And I told him what happened. I said, I'm going to be called up. I'm going to go see the commanding officer. He said, no, you're not. I said, what do you mean? He was all, we got to remember, I'm a kid. I mean, even though I've had this other experience and this capped on it, I haven't had too many of these life experiences. He says, he's not going to say a word. I said, well, why? He says, did he say that to you? I said, yes. You say that to the commanding officer? I said, I would. He's not going to say a word. He didn't say a word. I didn't say a word. I never said it. I don't think I ever spoken to him unless he, asked me a question. I answered him again. Yes, we put into a system where they could bang on the turret, and that wasn't a nice thing to say. He's going to wave to me as he goes by. All right, so I heard about the navigator, and you heard about the tail gunner, and the tail gunner was a character. tail gunner had a knife. Tail gunner, we'll come back to religion, tail gunner is Jewish. And he always carried a knife he wanted. We're in a barracks one time, in came by the way, my father was Roman Catholic, and my mother was Greek Orthodox. And I joined the Protestant church because I was fed up with all the fighting in the family about, which church I should belong. In the barracks one time, in came a drunk, and he called me a dirty Jew. Big difference.
We're rolling.
We're rolling. Yeah, I think, as I said, I was called a dirty Jew, and I don't know if I explained that. I may have and may not, but my father's was Roman Catholic, my mother was Greek Orthodox, and since both of them have two different popes, and it was a constant fight, I joined the Protestant religion. I think the Protestants were very unhappy about that, but I think Protestant means protest. Well, I was the right kind of guy for that one. Anyway, so I got up, and one of my crew members grabbed me and he says, "You're not Jewish." And I said, "Fuck them." Now, the point of the story is that anti-Semitism really permeated the Army and I guess all of our life back then. And it just wasn't very nice. At that particular time, I will go to a funny thing. I bought a fountain pen, Waterman, guaranteed for life. You're right, it broke. And I was very superstitious, and most guys were superstitious. Now, we hadn't gotten overseas, I don't believe. And, oh yeah, the fire. Everybody on an aircraft had to be trained to do somebody else's job in case they got sick. And I was, my nickname was Malfunction. They made me the assistant engineer. Perfect, right? And they taught me how to transfer fuel, etc., which is very important on a plane, which I had absolutely no concept of where the fuel went, what they did with it. It just made the engines go around. And I did that. And I learned to do that, and I learned to stand behind the pilot when we would land, and I'd call off the airspeed because you had to land at a certain airspeed or you were in deep trouble. And so back then, there was always somebody standing when you landed a plane. I don't think they do that anymore. But then my job, as what the engineer did, is I would then leave, go past the Martin upper turret gunner and the radio operator, drop down into a well, was a catwalk where the bomb bays would go to the back and I would go forward. Now at that point, everybody in the nose of the plane is out. That would be the nose gunner, navigator, bombardier, and that's it, I guess, yeah. 3 people would be out. And there was a machine there like a lawnmower, which had a pull. And it was called the putt-putt, for want of another name. It provided the auxiliary power to run the generator on the aircraft so that you'd have electricity. Now, when the plane lands, naturally, the nose wheel opens up, and this is a B-24, and the wheel goes down, and all the papers in the front of the plane would be blown all around the place. And it was not my job, not that I'm saying not my job, I don't do windows or anything like that, but had no knowledge that this was an important factor. And it was up to those people that had their loose papers, whether they were maps or anything like that, to have them secure. So you pull the string, and the machine starts, and I pull it, and then it belched fire. Now, on an airplane, and like on a boat, fire is not a nice thing. I mean, you just, by the way, one man I understand got a Congressional Medal of Honor, at least the story went on, that he pissed on a fire, which I thought was a very cute story. I don't believe it, but his name was supposed to have been Smith, Sergeant Smith. Anyway, I put the fire out with my hands. And when I got it out, naturally I wouldn't touch turn the machine back on, because I still didn't know what the hell was going on. And I went up and I screamed there was fire, and the radio operator, Jimmy Broderick, jumped down, took a fire extinguisher, and he completely encased it in whatever the stuff is in that. Now, it turned out that what had burnt was a comic book. Now, when I mentioned that my pilot wasn't a very forgiving person, he accused me of having that comic book. Well, I didn't read comic books. I mean, I was into reading whatever books I could carry, but I didn't read comic books. Whose comic book it was, I have no idea, but it had blown and caught in that particular thing. The nose gunner, he rang a bell when he heard fire, and the nose gunner, we were now traveling on the runway, he went out to Bombay's. And he didn't get killed. He went into rolling position and came out. We had on leather suits and stuff like that. I was slightly incensed that I was accused of starting a fire on a plane. But of course, you take that for granted, that this man would accuse you if it were raining outside. I ruined the day. The Navigator, I'm going to tell you more about the Navigator. We're in Springfield. No, we're in Westover Field. And we are told we're going to go on a night mission, and we're going to fly out to Ohio, no radio, and only wing lights on, that's all, nothing else, no radio. And we're going to navigate our way out to someplace in Ohio and then bomb something out there. No dropping of bombs, but something out there. I pleaded with the pilot that I was not necessary. It's a night mission. There's nothing a gunner can do in the back. He said, "You're flying." Well, on the way back, we get to the area of Westover Field, and we drop down. And we weren't flying on oxygen at all. And we drop down, and he says, he drops his wheels down. Now, my job, as was the other gunner, Neil Lawson, to use flashlights and look at the wheels to see that the pins came out, because if the pin didn't come out, that meant that the landing gear was not locked and it would collapse on landing. And I'm looking out, and he got the earphones on. I said, "Yes, they're down and locked." And he says to the navigator, "Are you absolutely certain that it's Westover Field?" Now, the reason he asked is because there was an airfield at Hartford, and I believe there was a Navy field there, someplace there. And he says, "I'm reasonably certain." He then pulled the plane up. Everybody went on their ass, and the fight started. He says, "What do you mean?" He said, "If I land the plane on a commercial airfield or the Navy, I will be the laughing stock of God knows, the aircraft. This is going on. And I look out, and I look out the window, and I said to the pilot, I know where the airfield is. That's when the second fight started. The navigator said, he's only a kid. Well, of course, he was right. I was 19. He must have been about 21, I think, or 22. So, we're all in that category of being infants. And he said, you're going to listen to him? And he said he knows where the field is. Now, we're at treetop level, practically treetop level. And I told him what direction to go in, straight ahead, to the left, to the right, And I said to him, the airfield is directly ahead. Made the signal, the lights went on, we landed on our field. The pilot came over and he said, how did you know where the field was? And I said, I followed the bus route. And any flyer will know that old-time flyers used to do sight navigation, and you would go down and read railroad crossings and things like that, and that's what I did. I knew where the movie house was, and in Springfield, if anybody goes there, I'm positive it's still there, is a good restaurant, the Student Prince, and good sauerkraut. Okay, the navigator didn't speak to me. I had a lot of people that didn't speak to me, I guess. It was sort of one of these things, I guess he didn't want to be, put down. And then there was the time that he went on another night mission in Springfield. And as I told you, my job was to look out the window and see if the wheels were up or the wheels were down, or if anything was wrong on the plane. And I had my Class A uniform on. It was the only way you could get off the post. And we had windows in those old planes that lifted up, and there was nothing there. It was just air. It was a very old airplane. And I looked out, and I was blinded. I couldn't see, and I had a mouthful of gasoline, and I fell to the ground. I was really in pain, and I don't remember if I threw up or not, but Neil said, what's wrong? And I said, I can't see, I'm blind. And I said, there's a gasoline leak. Gasoline was just gulping out of the wings. Well, he passed the word on, bango, down we went, landed. I was sitting there, I think there was a canteen of water. Somebody either put water on my face or I washed my face in water. And I could see, and turned out that when they filled the plane up, it wasn't level. It was, I guess, at a tilt, and they put too much gasoline, or however they could do that, but it came out and gulped out, and the mission, whatever, was off. So I unzipped my suit, I put on my hat, and my pilot said, where are you going? I said, I'm going to town. He did not appreciate that. He thought I set that whole thing up, because I managed to, scoodle, because I had a pass to go to town. Passes. I don't know if you got passes. It always annoyed me that the officers could go wherever they wanted, but the enlisted men could not. So we created our own passes. We got a book of passes, and we were under the impression, what was wrong, I found out later in law school, I thought that if you signed a phony name, it meant nothing. So I remember once I was stopped by an MP in Times Square, and he said, Captain Midnight? I said, yeah, it's this guy's name, and got away with it. We would do things like that. Okay. I think this brings us up to when we're going to go overseas, and to show you the mentality of my flying officer. We left, we were going over by ship, and he had an opportunity to go home. We were in New Jersey. I don't know what port it was, where it was. And he volunteered his crew for KP. Now, I tell you, nobody else would have done a thing like that but a first-class rat. I mean, we all had a chance to go home and call your mother or your girlfriend or whatever. Okay, but he volunteered us for KP. We did not become sergeants until we were overseas, so therefore we could pull KP. On the ship going over, I wrenched my back very badly, and I couldn't bend over at all. And I went to the medics, and the medics taped me. They put tape from here down to my belly button and tied me up. There was no fresh water on the boat to shower. It was only salt water. When we were in the Irish Sea, by the way, the Air Corps always had the best. We always had the best. We were on the top deck of this luxury liner. And we're all standing there looking at the Irish Sea. And I think sound travels faster. I can't remember which. But everybody screamed, fighters coming in. And they all fell to the ground. I couldn't move because I was taped. I wasn't mesmerized. The only way I could fall would be to fall on my ass or flat on my face. And as they skimmed by, or before they skimmed by, I said 3 Spitfires. And they thought that was wonderful. Tremendous. What aircraft recognition this kid had. Oh, I have to go back, because this is funny. They always had to test your ability to function as a gunner, and they would put film next to your machine gun, and would go through your gun sight. We had a very special gun sight. It was a Sperry invention, and it had a line, and it was a line, and you had to do all kinds of crazy things. And the first time, everybody did it in their turrets or the waist, and I'm down on the turret, and I got down there, and one of the gentlemen, I'm sure it was an officer, because there was the only one that wasn't an officer up front was the, well, it doesn't matter, but they used the relief tube. Now, a relief tube is a funnel, and you would urinate in this funnel, and the urine would go out the plane. Well, it's okay. I mean, that's fine. But it would come back, and it would splash over the turret. Now, a little urine is not going to hurt you. I mean, it just won't. I mean, you know, we're grown up. But it colored the entire area of the turret where my gun sight would function. Now, I had a problem because they brought this plane up and they wanted me to shoot at it, and I couldn't very well shoot at it, so I used my finger and I went like this and made some film, and I went like that, film. And when we went to the briefing, everybody had good grades, and they said that the ball turret gunner was very creative, but we figured out it had to be his finger because we played it over and over again. So up we go again. And I told them again, don't use the funnel until I'm out of there. Well, they did it again. Now, this is no joke because we had to go up pretty high and I had to be on oxygen. The third time, and I know it sounds silly, but these are true stories. The third time went up and I heard I was very happy about that. I heard it was the co-pilot said, I wet my leg. My leg is wet. And the pilot said, what do you mean you wet your leg? I had to use the relief tube and it's been cut. And the pilot said to me, did you cut the relief tube? I said, me, sir? Not I, sir. But, you know, you piss on me once, you piss on me twice, the third time you don't get a shot at it. So I cut it. Anyway, when we got the film back, I got a commendation. I was very, very happy because they used my film for a training film. It was very, very unique. You had to know you had to recognize the aircraft you were firing at. It had to be a certain length, etc. And then you'd set it in quickly into your gun sight, which was a computer, and then you had to cross it. Then you did everything. You did it with your feet. You did it with your hands. It was quite a complicated thing, but allegedly it was very accurate. Okay. All right. So now we're going overseas, and I'm all taped up, and I'm itchy, and we get off, and we're in England, and we go to a place where we're going to be assigned to a squadron. And I'm desperate because I can't get at this tape. You must also remember that I was issued a .45. A lot of people wondered about that because in the Pacific, I understand, crew members were issued either shotguns or carbines, but I was issued a .45 sidearm. And as soon as we got to where we were, we dumped our bags, I immediately went to, what do they call that again? Sick call. Now, you have to picture I had on a flight jacket and I had a .45 under my armpit. And I go in and I said to the corporal, I said, I know we just got here, I didn't have time to sign the sick book, but I really have to see the doctor because I've got to get rid of this. It's driving me crazy. So he said, don't worry, I'll get you in. When I heard a voice say, is there any more? That's it. There's nobody else on the sick book. He said, no, we have one more man out there, and this is what this officer and gentleman said. He said, I don't care if he has appendicitis. If he hasn't signed the sick book, I'm not seeing him. He stepped out of the office, and I said, you son of a bitch. It was one of my favorite words. I wouldn't let you touch me with a 10-foot pole. I said, they told me that when I got overseas, you guys were going to lighten up a little bit. I don't know what his problem was. He wasn't being shot at. He was in England. He was taking care of guys that had colds, athlete's foot, etc. And his mouth was agape. I believe that's the word, agape. And my jacket was open, and I think he saw the .45. And I was slightly beyond the edge at that moment. The corporal was dumbfounded, and I turned around and I walked out. Nobody came after me. Went back to where I was billeted, and I said, I think I'm going to be arrested again. That was one of the favorite things because it's what they do to people. You don't yell at officers. So the guy said, don't worry about it. You'll stay here in the barracks. He was a nice kid. He was a kid from Brooklyn. He said, most kids from Brooklyn are very nice guys. He said, I'll bring you food. You'll stay hidden. And I said, but the tape. He said, come with me. Went into the shower. He grabbed the tape. He took off every hair on my chest, on my back. And then I managed to get some sleep. Okay, now, here comes the fun and games. And this is an important one. We end up in the 445th 700 Squadron. The very first night we get there, I honestly thought that I had been dropped into an insane asylum. Because the crew that had been there had been wiped out. And these fellows were bonkers, absolutely bonkers. At least that was my impression. I had never gone away to to any of these crazy nonsense. I didn't belong to Greek societies or anything like that. And one fellow had a bolt of a 50 caliber machine gun, not just the bolt, and he slipped in a 50 caliber bullet in the facing, and he had a hammer, and he's going to hit it. Now, when you do something like that, it's going to explode. The whole thing is going to rupture. You're going to be in trouble. It didn't explode, but the slug went into the door. I didn't know that he took all the stuff out of the thing. It was a gag. They also had set up a guy that would come in the door, and just before he'd come in, some guy would throw a throwing knife, and it would hit the door. And I turned to one of my fellow gunners and I said, I think they're going to kill me before the Germans do. And then later on, they told us that it was sort of like an initiation to their little barracks. But I vowed that I would get my revenge. So I guess I should just go to the revenge part. After being there sometime and flying quite a number of missions, and being slightly insane, I took a belt of 50 caliber machine guns. I must have been about 12 of them in metal links. And I pulled all of the cordite out of it, but I kept the caps. And I put back the slugs. And I had it draped over my bed as a souvenir. Now, I vowed, I have coursing through my veins Romanian and Sicilian blood, and we all believe in getting revenge. And they were playing poker. It was in the afternoon, nobody was flying, it was raining like hell. And I went through my act. I'm too young to die. I was pretty good at it too, remember? Should have gotten there. And I kept saying, I'm too young to die, and they're playing poker, they're paying no attention to me. And I said, I can't stand it, it's driving me crazy. I said, sooner or later it's going to kill me, I'm dying of this and that. I said, once somebody said, shut up, and I took the ammo, walked over to the potbelly stove, and I said, the hell with all of you, and I dropped it into the stove. Well, one guy went through the window. He opened it, we went right into the window, into the mud, into the rain. Guys hit the doors, they went all over, and I'm screaming, what did I do? What did I do? And it turned out all it went just pop, pop, pop. And fortunately, none of the slugs went through the stove. And they chased me, and they threw mud pies at me, and I just didn't care what they did, because I thought that was they got their, I got my revenge. They also, we used to play poker, and when they played poker, the guys would sit with their cards, up close, and we would steal, take home, let's put it that way, because we didn't sell them to anybody, very pistol cartridges. It goes in a very pistol, it's a flare gun. And the flares would either be red, green, whatever the colors. And we'd snap off the shotgun shell part, and I'd roll it up in newspaper, and we'd feed the fire. And when they're playing poker, we just drop it in, and suddenly the entire room, this barracks room, would turn red, a red smoke or a green smoke. When it cleared, they had their hands on the cards and the money. It was hilarious. One hand was always on the cards, the other hand was always on the money, because we were all conditioned to this gag. And gags were quite a few. When we'd go to the toilet, John, latrine, whatever it was called, very late at night, we would take a very pistol out, load it, and fire it. The MPs would come, and they'd say, well, who did that? And we'd say, the guy's over there. and they would go and roust those guys and give them hell. The ground pounders, the ground personnel, disliked us immensely. They had a perpetual hate because we made more money than they did. We truly did. I was a staff sergeant, and I made the equivalency in pay of a captain. Overseas pay, flight pay, and whatever the hell else they call it. And we threw our money around like it didn't matter, for the simple reason that the next morning you might be eating sauerbraten someplace. So it really didn't matter. Let me tell you the story about the oranges. An aborted mission means that they send you back, something happened, somebody changed their mind, whatever it was. And we went to the briefing, and then we went to breakfast, and they came in and said the mission was aborted. Well, that was very good, marvelous, And all hell broke loose in the mess hall. As we were very privileged, and we did get fresh eggs, I think, and good meat and all of that nonsense, we got oranges. And they started to throw the oranges around. Well, I grew up during the Depression, and I didn't think that was funny. And they were just, they had gone banco, it was. So I kept picking up the oranges that weren't spoiled. And I had a gas mask kit that the first thing I did when I got to England was to throw the gas mask away and put my underwear in and socks when I would go. That's what we would use for a overnight bag. And I stuffed it full of oranges. Now, when you weren't flying, you had nothing to do. The only duty that we had would be at night to guard your airplane. They would trust us for that. But we had no KP, we didn't pull guard duty, other than on the plane, we pulled guard duty on a plane. So I went back and I got into my Class A uniform, and I flew out of a place called Tiverton. Don't ask me how to spell it. And but it was near Norwich. I changed trains at Ipswich, and I went to Norwich. And Norwich was a delight because I liked old things. I liked castles, and I liked all of this, go around and see things. So I figured I'd spend the day in Norwich, have dinner there, and then come back. And so, but take the oranges. See, I get off the train, and I'm there, and I'm on a corner, and I call the kids over. The kids always wanted chewing gum and chocolate, and cigarettes. And they wouldn't take the cigarettes that we got for free. They wanted the good cigarettes. So anyway, I'm giving away oranges, and how old am I? 19 to 20, I can't remember, but right on the cusp. And a woman comes out of a house with an umbrella, and she starts to beat me with it. And my mother always said, you never ever hit a woman, never. You can restrain a woman, but you never hit her. So I ran, and I ran into the pub, and I'm out of breath, and the guys there are looking, they're laughing. I said, what happened? What did I do wrong? And the Englishman said to me, well, she thought you were a dirty old man. I didn't know what a dirty old man was. And then when they explained it to me, I was furious, and I came that close to hitting a woman. I didn't think it was funny that she would accuse me of something like that. But I didn't think it was nice to throw the orange. They didn't have oranges. They didn't have any kind of citrus thing. They didn't bring anything in for the English. All right. Let me tell you about meeting an old friend. I had a buddy that was in the infantry, and he got lucky. Turned out that just before going to France, they discovered he had flat feet. Just like the Army, they discovered that you had only one leg, or something like that. So they had him at a repo depot someplace in England. And so I wrote to him and he wrote to me, but I didn't know where he was and he didn't know where I was, and I'm not supposed to tell him where I am or any of that kind of nonsense, because God forbid the Germans would find out, although the Germans knew exactly where we were at every minute of the day. Every night before a mission, they would tell us where we were going. That was very nice. I enjoyed that immensely. That we go into a room with MPs and a screen, and they lock the door, just like in the movies, And then they pull it up and you'd find out what the mission is for the day, right? Except I knew what the mission was for the day, because the German with the best jazz program told me where we were going. The 445th, you will be our guest, blah, blah, blah. And the cook knew where we were going. The guys in the hallway knew where we were going. All right, so I'm getting back to my friend. So I wanted to find my friend. And so I went to London and I went to headquarters, which of course was a mistake, because all I wanted them to tell me where my old buddy was. And I went in, I got into the headquarters, and when I finally told them what I wanted, they threw me through the door. They literally kicked me out. They told me that I was insane and that the Army doesn't function that way. So, using what knowledge I have, I had an officer uncensor my letter. I wrote to him and I said, Sal, I'm at this base, I'm at this telephone number, you can reach me, that's where my squadron is. Kindly tell me where you are. And this officer was nice enough, he said, you're absolutely right. He says, it's stupid. But he signed it, I had to stamp it and it would go through. So then it went email, I guess, not email, what do they call that? V-mail or whatever, some kind of mail. It would go to all the way to the States, I guess, and all the way back again, etc. But finally we got together. He phoned me and I got on a train because I had all the time in the world. By that time I think I was an extra gunner. And I'll tell you about that. But anyway, so I went to see him. And he was in a repo depot, which means where all these poor guys were broken up and had to be rehabilitated and reassigned and things like that. And I said, well, come on, get on your Class A's, let's get out of here and have dinner. No, the food here is better than the food in town. It was hospital food. And I guess it was. They had beautiful food. And but I saw some guys in black uniforms. I didn't like the black. We were told that if you got shot down, you want me to, if you got shot down, you didn't surrender to anybody but a guy in a green uniform. Never to a man in a black uniform. They were the SS, and they took very poorly to
Okay, keep going.
all right. So anyway, wait a minute, I'm losing the thought. Well, okay, so we're sitting at this table and having coffee with my friend Sal, and I said, who are those people? And he said, well, they're ex-paratroopers that are broken up, and they're here training everybody to get them in shape, and they wear these black gym suits and stuff. And I said in a very loud voice, I said, you mean that stupid son of a bitch over there is an ex-paratrooper, the one with the big nose? I said, that god-awful looking piece of shit. And my friend is going crazy because He's going to hear you. I said, I want him to hear me. And he turns around, and of course it was a kid I knew from grade school. And we hugged each other, and he came over and had coffee. We were laughing. He had jumped the day before D-Day, because they put guys on the ground. And when he heard what I was doing, he said to me, could I come to your airfield? I said, why? He said, can you get me on a plane? And I was a little suspicious of this. I said, yeah, Eddie. Eddie Rose, by his name is. Eddie Rose. Eddie, I can get you on a plane. Why do you want to go on a plane? Because you gotta understand, we're all, the war made a lot of people insane. He said, well, I've never landed in one. And I said to him, there isn't a pilot on our airfield that would allow you to board the plane once I told that story, because we were all superstitious. Imagine getting a guy that's, okay.
All right, we're going to stop right here. I got to change tapes again.
Okay, go ahead. All right, left off. What were we talking about? Oh, about being superstitious, I guess. Yeah. So naturally, I convinced him that even though I could get him on a plane, because we were always flying practice missions. Practice, practice, practice. That's the name of the game. But my friend Sal said he wanted to come visit me. So we set up a date, and I set up a pilot that would take us. In fact, it was my old pilot, who, even though I didn't particularly like, he was a very good flyer. I trust him in flying. Well, anyway, I got them all outfitted in all the, the pants and the this and the that, because we didn't know if we were going to be on high altitude or not. And I had a buddy who had a Jeep take us out to the plane, and we went out there. The plane's engines were windmilling, and the way you went to a B-24 was through the back of the plane, not the bomb bays. The best way is the back. They'd open up the door, you'd throw your equipment in, you'd grab, and then you could pull your arms, you could lift yourself and get into the plane. When I took all of the heavy equipment, I left him with the 2 parachutes, 2 chest chutes. When I pulled myself in, the guys in the waist were laughing, and I couldn't hear them, but you could see on their faces they're laughing at what's going on. And I look out the waist window, and what had happened is that he picked up both parachutes by the red handles, and he popped them, of course. The parachutes opened, and the Jeep was on only 2 wheels now. The sergeant whose Jeep it belonged to was trying to spill the air out of it. I jump down, I get out, he's standing there like he had wet his pants, he's just holding on to the 2 handles. He has a red handle as a souvenir, and I have one as a souvenir. And the pilot said, do you still want to go? And I said, sure. But then they told us they had only 1 chute. Well, I never flew without a chute. So I asked my friend Sal if he wanted to go, and he said no, he didn't feel comfortable doing that. So he didn't go for his airplane ride. We're in England, and we're in the war. Oh, and I think I told you the story about them going through the window and that nonsense. You had to have your own cutlery. You had to have your own knife, fork, and spoon. Our mess hall didn't have any. Why, I have no idea. I'm sure the officers did. They had no drinking cups at all. So we always had to have with us our own little canteen, little clipped onto your belt. Mine was stolen once. Found out it was taken by a guy right in the barracks that I found, and I had my initials on it. And I said, that's mine. And one of the other guys says, but he has nothing to drink from. I said, well, join the crowd. Either do I. And I took back my cup. I told you that you had to pull duty by taking care of the airplanes at night just before they took off. That was the only duty that you had to do. And one time I was called to do it, and it was cold and wet, and I was very tired, and I had been carousing, and I couldn't keep my eyes open, and I knew that if you fell asleep, you could be court-martialed. And it wasn't very nice to fall asleep, because the Germans were doing very nasty things. They were dropping paratroopers down, espionage kind of guys. I guess that's what you call them. And they would drop fountain pens into our airplanes. They looked like fountain pens, but they were altimeter bombs, so that when the bomb got up to a certain altitude, this thing would explode and the plane would go down. It was a very good method. So we had to make sure that nobody got near the plane. So I broke into an escape kit, and I took out the stay awake pill. When you were shot down, you had certain things in this thing. You had morphine, which was never there, and you had other stuff, and you had this pill, and I guess it's what the kids use in college, to stay awake. But this was a super pill, because this was supposed to make you feel like Superman. And I did not want to be court-martialed, so I took the pill, took some water, and I felt great. I've never taken drugs in my life, but this was marvelous. And they told me that they weren't going to come for the plane until I think 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and wouldn't you know it, at 2 or 2 o'clock in the morning, they come over and they say, you can leave now. So I said, why? He said, well, they changed the mission to something else. So I went back to my barracks, and I put my head on the pillow, I closed my eyes, and it was like when you snap a window up, it rolled up. I couldn't keep my eyelids. My eyelids would not close. Every time I put my head down, it would go like this, and around 4 o'clock the next day, like somebody hit me with a baseball bat. I just collapsed. That was a great pill. When a couple of years back, I went to Mitchell Field with a buddy of mine to look at old airplanes. He likes old airplanes, and there were some people there from the Southern Air Wing, 8th Air Force Southern Air Wing, and I joined. I don't know, if it was $10, and I figured I'd get to see some old airplanes, and I never have been to a meeting. I'm not a real joiner. But for them, I wrote some stories. And if I may, I'll read them to you, or I will maybe not read them, or just tell you what they are. And
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Were you in the same plane all the time?
No.
No. So you didn't have a named plane with nose art? Or?
No. You didn't have the same plane. In fact, that's a funny story. There was a plane called Patches, and that they should have made a memorial to that plane. I flew home in that plane. Patches had literally over 100 flak holes in it, and then they renamed it Patches because. And by the way, it flew at a tilt. That was funny. It flew. I know it sounds silly, but it flew sideways. I mean, the way you would normally fly this way, it seemed that one of the wings always went just slightly at a tilt. if you managed to get passage was assigned to you, you knew you were coming home. Nobody's going to take that plane down. That was a good luck plane. Okay, let me tell you about that. Well, first of all, I became an extra gunner. That's something else. But coming home, the adjutant officer in the squadron said I would fly with him, and I would fly the nose on B-24s. We're going to fly the B. We didn't know where we were going to go. We had no idea whether we were going to go to India or we were going to go home. But they said we're going to go home and we're going to have to do some navigational flights. So I'm flying the nose, and we're supposed to go up to the tip of Scotland, turn around, and come back and land. I'm in the nose. There's no more Germans. The Germans, all the Nazis, by the way, died. They disappeared. There wasn't a Nazi left in Germany. I assure you, the UN knows this for a fact. They all went to Sweden. Anyway, something hit my eyes. Sunlight. I was resting. I was probably asleep. Nothing to do because there's nothing to see. And I see sunlight, a rim of sunlight. We're supposed to not be flying at night, but then up there it's always very bright. And I look forward and I see nothing but water. I look to my left, water. I look to my right, water. We are no longer over Scotland. This I knew. You didn't have to be a bright boy to know that Scotland is not inundated with water. This is the North Sea or the Atlantic Ocean or God knows what. And I turned my head around, and the navigator, I have no idea who he was. It wasn't my old navigator. He was sound asleep. That's a true story, not a joke. And the B-24, from that angle, you could see up into where the pilot and co-pilot's feet were. And both of them were out of like this. They were relaxed. They were asleep. Now the rest of the gunners in the back, I don't know what the hell they were doing. They were playing cards or they were asleep, who knows what. And I put my hand to my throat. We had throat mics. And I said in a very low, quiet, controlled voice, "Hi, is there anybody in this aircraft that's awake? I don't want to upset anybody, but is there anybody in this aircraft?" And then the fun started. The pilot yelled to the co-pilot, "You were supposed to be flying. You were supposed to be." They had it on George. George's automatic pilot. And we were flying out to God knows where. And the navigator woke up and they were yelling at one another, and I'm saying to myself, what a bunch of fuck-ups, because this to me wasn't practice. This was screw up. Now, we get down on the ground, and I don't know how many days went by, but the pilot said to me, Richard, by the way, he was a decent guy. He called me Richard. He said, "Richard, do you have a wife?" I said, "No, sir, I do not," or whatever his name was. "I do not." He said, "Do you have a real girlfriend you want to get home to?" And I had only been overseas for a couple of months, I said, "No, I don't mind." He said, "Look, I got a young pilot that is willing and wants very much to fly the nose, to come home. He's married, he wants to see his wife." I said, he said, "I'll get you on somebody else's crew," because he was the adjutant. He could do all this paperwork. So I said, "Okay." I said, "But please, no boats. I've had it with the boat. I don't want to go on another boat." He says, "No, I'll get you on another crew." That's how I got onto patches. All right, let's move ahead. I get home, I get this, that, I give me 30 days or 15, whatever it is. And I get back to this airfield. The war is still going on in Japan. And some of my buddies came over and they grabbed me and they said, "How the hell did you get out?" And I said, "Out of what?" "The adjutant went down in the brig." I said, "That's the way it goes. That's the way it goes." So sometimes you get lucky. Going back, I don't need that to read. I'll tell you what happened. We took off on a mission to Berlin. Berlin's a nasty place to go, and it had a bad reputation. And we were the first wave over wherever the hell we were going, the target area. And it's a long flight. And when you flew in those planes, you got down on the ground, and you always knew who flew that day because they shouted. Everybody shouts because nobody could hear. Your hearing had gone. The engines, you're 8 hours, maybe 9 hours. Who knew how long you were in the plane? And so this guy runs up to me and he says, "You were in the first wave." I said, "Yeah. How many went down?" I said, "We were lucky." I said, "They caught hell behind us." He cursed like a son of a bitch. He had book on us. He was running a pool. This was Sergeant Greyboy, my buddy, one of my favorite friends. Sergeant Greyboy would book on anything. There was another guy that I hated, was the guy that came up after a mission and he said, "Thank God you got back." He was an armorer, and I never heard anybody say, "Thank God you came back." You know, I was really quite thrilled, you know. And I said, "Well, it's very nice," because he was now going to take out the guns and do the dirty work in the plane. Turned out, he said, "I left my coffee cup in your plane and I couldn't get a cup of coffee." Okay. All right. So we went on a mission, and this has funny overtures. Went on a mission, and they aborted it. You know what that means. They aborted the mission. Well, it was a bad one to begin with because planes were running into one another. And when all we could see, we took off in fog. And you got up to 6,000 fog, 10,000 fog, 12,000 fog. You're going up there and there's nothing but fog. And then it wasn't fog anymore. It was those, what do they call them? Contrails. Because, you know, when you break up the ice and it causes, okay.
Yeah.
And we had to form on flares. They were the flare colors. That's why I described all the fun things we did with flares. So anyway, the pilot, we had seen some planes. We didn't see them hit. You just saw the big explosion. You saw the big red. You felt the vibration. So the pilot was pretty smart. He was a good pilot. He was just not a nice person. He decided that we'll fly around, burn up gasoline, and do whatever we have to do with the bombs. So we're flying around in the North Sea all by ourselves, and the navigator's getting upset, rightfully so. Why? Because the fighters are going to pick up a single aircraft, you know, and you're a dead goose. So he sees a bastard squadron we all had different tail markings. And you could tell from the tail markings that these guys were just doing the same. They had the smarts to say, let's stay together. So he tacks on, and the navigator was still pretty bright. He said, what if it's a German weather ship? Now, when B-24s would go down, they didn't always break up completely, and some of them were actually captured with just the landing gear broken. So they rebuild them, and they would fly them up and try to infiltrate our squadrons, and they would find out where we're going, listen to the conversation, what plot, everything. And you just would have, you'd just sort of be stuck, because if this was a German leading us around on a merry goose chase, we were in deep trouble. So he goes up front, he pulls out, comes up front, writes down all the data on the guy's tail and all that crap. I think they talked to one another with something or other. So he said, we're going to pull the pins on the bomb. So we went into the bomb base, and you had to take the cotter pins out of the bombs. And then all hell broke loose. The place turned into a shooting gallery, and we were hit. And we dropped our bombs. We didn't know who we hit. What poor stupid bastard on the ground was so upset that he decided to fire. If he didn't fire at us, we wouldn't have dropped the bombs. Now the pilot, our pilot, was very upset because he wanted to be, and he did become, a lead pilot. He wanted a promotion so badly. Anyway, we get back, and all of the other members of our squadron had gotten back earlier, much earlier. We come back, one engine's out, all kinds of holes in the plane. The crew chief is mad as hell because he would rather that we had gone down and he wouldn't have to repair the plane. And it's true. That's the way the guy felt. That's what he said. Look what you did to my plane. How many hours I'm going to be working on this? I wanted to kick his butt, but okay. All right, so now you have to understand I'm dead, right? I think it was the first time I was dead. So I'm dead, and I go back to our barracks, and everything is gone. The bedding is gone. My footlock is gone. My shirts, pants, stuff that's hung up, it's gone. So what's going on? So we go to where we're supposed to go, and they told us that the footlock is here, this and that. And it seems that their practice was that when a crew went down, they immediately took the footlocker because they were going to send things home to the families, and they would go through it to make sure there wasn't anything in it that would upset a wife, whatever. Girly pictures or whatever some idiot might have in his footlocker. Well, everything was fine. I got everything back except my tunic. You know what a tunic is. A tunic is a jacket. Now, there were no tunics to be had on my base. They didn't have any more. So, this is old catch-22 again. You can't get off the base unless you were in a Class A uniform. You can't get a Class A uniform because they don't have any, right? If I could get off the base, I could buy one off the base because the English had these Army-Navy shops. And I could go in for 30, 40 bucks, I could buy myself another jacket. But I can't get off the base. And I was very upset. And along comes a guy with my jacket on. Now, I could tell my jacket because I could not sew. I couldn't do any of those little things. I actually was the worst soldier in the world. I would take cotta pins, snap them, and I'd put the buttons on with cotta pins and hide it so nobody would see it. And I had a special pair of silver wings that I bought, a little fancier than what the other guys had, because I thought it was kind of cute. And also, the jacket had my name stenciled in the back with my serial number. This guy says to me, I said, "That's my jacket." No, I said, "That's my jacket." He said, "But it fits me." Now, I want to keep going back to this business about Brooklyn. It was an invitation to a fight. He wanted me to fight him for my jacket. One guy said to me one time when I told him, he said, "Why don't you call an MP?" I said, "Never called a cop in my life." I said, "When I was a kid, the cops used to hit us with billies, make us move. We were playing stickball, or we were disruptive, we were too noisy, or this or that." And so I just looked at him. I just put my hand in my jacket, pulled out my .45, pointed it right at him, and I said to him in a very nice, calm voice, I said, "On the jacket is a medal, sharpmanship medal for a .45. I said, "I'm going to cock it, I'm going to take the safety off, and when I cock it, I said, I'm going to shoot you, and I'm not going to get any blood on the jacket." And I had it pointed just where the jacket ended. He took the jacket off immediately, threw it down, and away he went. I've been asked by many guys, would I have shot him? I think I would have. I honestly think at that point, after the aggravation I had that day, that this clown is stealing something that belongs to me right in front of me, and he wants me to punch him in the nose to get back I think I would have shot him. Now, Gray Boy. I think I told you before, this guy. He's funny, he was into everything. He was into black market. He had a beautiful leather jacket. I never got a leather jacket. I always felt I'm a deprived person. Well, anyway, we had a deal. If he wanted my camera, which I wouldn't sell him, and the camera story. When you were flying, when planes got hit, guys would bail out. They would want to know how many guys got bailed out, because everybody had a different count. So taking a photograph was rather important. And I found, and photography was very strong with me, and I picked up this K20, I think it was called K20 camera, like a speed graphic, and I knew how to work it. And I took pictures. I took some beautiful pictures. And when we got down on the mission, I went to the photographic unit, and I knocked on the door. I wanted to see my pictures. They said it was classified. I said, "What are you talking about?" I took the pictures. I said, "I want to see how they came out." "They're classified." He said, "Sergeant, if you don't go away, we're calling the MP." And I'm banging on the door that I want to see I don't see anything wrong with just looking at them. Well, give me one little snapshot for my, souvenirs. Well, they gave me a batch of pictures and they sent me away, but not of the mission I flew. Under threat of calling the MPs, which I knew would be trouble. Gray Boy and the camera. Anyway, so Gray Boy wanted my camera, I wanted his jacket. We couldn't make a deal, so we made an announcement in the barracks that if Gray Boy got killed, I got the jacket, and if I went down, he got the camera. And one morning he went up to fly, and he had on the jacket. And I told him to take it off. He says, it's cold outside. I said, I don't give a goddamn. I said, take the jacket off. I made him take the jacket off and wear a sweater because we had a deal. Now, I became an extra gunner. My pilot did some silly things, and he got away with them. And but they promoted him. He was a good flyer. And the tail gunner went, I went, the engineer went, everybody went off the crew. And he got other personnel to train him to be a lead pilot. One of the duties, well, I'm doing nothing, by the way, now. I'm without a crew, right? So I'm walking around, having fun, right? Could do anything I want. But I couldn't go home until I finished my tour, right? So it was driving me slightly crazy because I couldn't go home. And the war was coming to an end, and I wasn't going to see it. And by the way, I really did love to fly. I truly did love to fly. Neil, the armor gunner, one time thought I was hit because my leg got sopping wet. I had a flask of whiskey, and my father had sent it to me. But I thought it was metal. It was leather and glass, and it broke and scotch ran down my leg. And that's a disaster. Neil liked to play chess. I loved to play chess. Played chess with him all the time. He never won a game. He met him in London once. We were no longer crew members. And he said, one more game of chess. And he said, check. And he said, I finally got you. So I looked at it. I said, yeah, that's a pretty good move. And I said, but when I move out of it, it's mate. He had a fit. He absolutely went bonkers. Oh yeah, let me tell you this story about Gray Boy and flying the last mission. Everybody wanted to go home. Everybody wanted to go home and be a hero, or whatever you want to call it. And one night, in bed, and Gray Boy slept in the bed next to me, and he was doing something I have never seen anybody do. He was putting out his cigarettes with his fingertips. Yeah, I know, it sounds ridiculous. It's kind of painful, I thought. And then he'd throw the cigarette down on the ground, and he'd light another one. And he had plenty of cigarettes. And he's lighting cigarettes and putting them out with his fingers. And I said to him, Gray Boy, I said, you got a problem. We want to talk about this. He said, this is my last mission. This is it. We had different deals when you're extra gunners. And he started with the numbers. A couple of $100, a couple more $100 cash. I was a poor kid. He had money. He was into the black market. He'd get you anything you wanted. And he wanted me to fly his last mission. Now we were talking about this before. You said, how could a guy do that? Well, it was very easy. When somebody was sick, let's say, and you were to fly somebody's last mission, when you were sick and you're flying somebody's mission, your name is Gray Boy. My name is Alagna. So they know on the roster, Sergeant Alagna is to fly in Tom Jones's plane. So you'd show up, and you had your helmet on, you had your goggles on the top of your head, you had your uniform. He never saw you before. This is This is dark, woolly. All he wanted was a body at a machine gun or in a turret or wherever it was. And away you fly. When you come back, he gets the credit and you get the money. So yes, it was done. And how many times it was done, I have no idea, but it was done. And so I'm sitting there with Gray Boy, and I said to him, I said, you know, Gray Boy, I'm not afraid of flying. And I don't think I'm going to get killed. And if I thought I was going to get killed, I'd stop flying. I mean, it was a voluntary thing. And if you really wanted to get out just that day without going through any nonsense, just walk into headquarters and punch the officer right in the mouth. You want a nice place to eat and sleep where it's nice and safe? They give you a nice little cage. You just walk in and pop them in the nose. And they said, "What'd you do that for?" I said, "I don't know. Just don't like officers." And they put you damn peas that take you away. So I said, "But I don't think I want to fly your last mission, because I really don't know if I'm going to have to bail out," which I didn't look forward to, ever. But if I had to bail out and I float down to Germany, they are not going to look lightly upon me, because I'm not I'm not a woodsy kind of guy. I don't know how to run through the woods and, eat the berries. I said I would probably end up by being in some stalag someplace. So now, Gray Boy, think of this. I'm in stalag something, and you are now me. You want me to continue? Okay.
This is the last tape, though.
Okay. I say you are now me, and being me, you have to fly the balance of my missions. You have to answer my mother's mail that's coming in and my girlfriend's mail that's coming in. And when the war is over and they come and get me, and they get me out of that prison, do you honestly think they're going to give me a hero's welcome? I said, I will be AWOL. As simple as that. And I'll go from a German prison to an American prison for a couple of bucks. And I said, I won't do it. He got on the plane. I put him on the plane with a bottle of scotch. He was drunk. He flew his last mission. He was as nutty as a fruitcake. Let me just tell you this one last thing, since we got, how many minutes? Okay. When I finally got home, not swimming the Atlantic, I was asked by a nice corporal. It was funny. He said to me, "Sergeant, I have to ask you, would you like to fly against the Japanese?" I couldn't believe anybody would ever ask me that question, ever. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, you have enough combat hours. You don't have to fly against the Japanese. I said, thank you very much. I said, you made my mother very happy. I said, I would like very much to walk around in a Class A uniform with my ribbons, my wings, chase after all the girls that you have been chasing. I said, that's what I want to do. And then I tried to get out of the Army, and that was next to impossible. But you don't have any more tape. But I got into lots of trouble. I mean, because every time I went someplace, they wanted me to do something that I didn't want to do, like stay. I never went AWOL in my life. I never spent a day in detention other than that crazy man that didn't know how to shoot a snake. And, I must tell you this. Being discharged, and it's cold, and we're all in our skivvies, and the poor kid behind me said to me, I can't go. A urine thing. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, I just relieved myself and I can't get a drop out. And I had a pitcher full. And I said to him, okay, I'll give you half, but if I'm pregnant, I'll kill you. And it was because he was afraid that if he, if he couldn't do it, they'd put him on the end of the line again and it'd be another couple of weeks and he couldn't get out. I think I told you about the injections, okay? I tried to buy my way out of having blood taken at the end because I don't like needles. The guy said to me, how'd you get all the medals? And I said, there's no Purple Hearts. And I just didn't like needles, and I did not like the Army. I didn't like playing soldier. The war was over. I wanted to go home. I did what I was supposed to do. I volunteered. It's over. All I wanted you guys to just realize, send me home. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Okay.